What up, though? Everything external. Everything happening outside the boundaries of all that stuff that's moving and shaking that makes you, you. That body made up of so many microscopic things that make up what you term your image, your physical, your being, your hair, your face, your head, your neck, your shoulders, your chest, your core, your pelvis, your arms, your hips, your thighs, your legs, your feet. And all you got to say is, this is me. The external, outwardly presentation. You know what? Ain't no outward or inward. The stuff that is you is both outer and inner at the same time, in the same way. You don't got to get a read on what's happening inside. You make an appointment with a white lab coat for that. You put your trust in numbers with a title, dot letter, dot letter, dot letter. That bunny rabbit out back seemed to always go to the vegetation of its choice. What is that bunny rabbit eating back there in the woods? That bunny rabbit don't need for nothing. That vegetation grow everywhere. If the grocery store closed, or if the white lab coat is unavailable to poke and prod you indefinitely, would you know what vegetation you could live on? Dr. Edward Shook's famous course in herbology. Herbs are better suited for the treatment of diseases than chemicals and other substances foreign to the human body. Very finely distributed, which are necessary for building up and maintaining the cells of all the organs of the body, and are of the greatest help in the performance of the vital functions. They are present in the human system, allowing direct assimilation, readily taken up in the circulation of the blood after undergoing certain changes in the digestive tract. It is true that our body contains minerals, but the minerals cannot be taken readily directly by the system. They must be obtained from a living cell of either plant or animal life. Plants have the power of taking up mineral substances through their roots from the soil and assimilate and transform them in such a way that they may be utilized as food as well as medicine. The human body, on the other hand, has not the ability of directly assimilating mineral substances and therefore cannot utilize them in any way. Herbs in healing the sick has survived for countless thousands of years. Herbs are organic and, therefore, are capable of becoming a part of the living organism. Also, because they, and they alone, are the source and origin of all life on earth. It is not conceivable or possible that any animal or human cell, organ, or body can be built from inorganic or earthy mineral matter, for the simple reason that Such inorganic matter is merely an accretion. It does not live or grow. We cannot conceive of a grain of sand, an atom of gold, a molecule of iron, a drop of water, or anything that is inorganic manifest life and grow from within. According to Webster, the word inorganic is described as not organic, not endowed with or subjected to organization, devoid of an organized structure or the structure of a living being, unorganized, as rocks, minerals, and all non-living chemical compounds and elements are inorganic. Pertaining to or embracing substances or species as inorganic chemistry, inorganic forces, the inorganic kingdom. The word organic is described by the same authority as pertaining to an organ or its functions, consisting of organs or containing them, as the organic structure of the human body or of plants. The end product of combustion of organic matter, particularly, is largely carbon dioxide, and both animal and human metabolism is considered today to be a slow process of oxidation. The human body always contains much more oxygen than any other element. The word oxygen is derived from the Greek, meaning to bring forth. The only breathable oxygen produced by nature is from the leaves or lungs of plants and given off to the atmosphere in abundance. Carbon dioxide does not and cannot support the life of the human or animal cell, but it is absorbed into the organism of the plant, the carbon being used for structural purposes and the oxygen being breathed out. We know well that the herb can and does assimilate inorganic mineral matter, and that though some mysterious and unknown alchemy convert this inert and lifeless matter into living organic material, which, when presented to the animal or human cell, is hungrily absorbed, sustaining and renewing its life process. The life process of the human cell cannot be sustained by any element or compound obtained directly from the inorganic kingdom. Even oxygen in the air we breathe is diluted with 79.07% of nitrogen, that is, by volume, or 77% nitrogen by weight. If pure oxygen is inhaled for more than a comparatively short length of time, it will destroy the tissues by burning them. If a mouse be placed into a large jar of oxygen, he will frisk about and be excessively active for 20 or 30 minutes, and then he will drop dead. But the oxygen from plants used as food and medicine does not so destroy. Oxalic acid does not occur free in nature, but is found in combination with sodium, potassium, calcium, iron, and manganese in the juices of many plants, such as rhubarb, sorrel, oak bark, cinchona, yellow dock, etc. Every saline aquatic plant contains iodine in combination with sodium, potassium, calcium, and manganese, also phosphates, sulfates, chlorides, bromides, etc. They are all non-poisonous nutrient foods, anti-scorbutics and vulnerary plants of the highest order. Here are two in particular that for thousands of years have been used successfully in the treatment and cure of chronic disease. Bladderwrack. It is an alternative of great virtue, especially in obesity, reducing fatty acids and tending to rid the system of useless waste matter. Irish moss, a remarkable demulcent, nutrient, and dietic, providing the organism with what are loosely called vitamins in the form of chlorides, iodides, bromides, phosphates, and sulfates of sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. All of them positive organic salts absolutely necessary to the healthy metabolism of the human body. This whole family of herbs is fully described together with their therapeutic application. The history of botanic remedies probably dates back to the dawn of man's existence on Earth, but for all practical purposes, that is only one conjecture, and there is now no way of finding out. We can only reason that primordial man, living close to nature in a wild state, must have observed the habits and instincts of animals, and if so, he must have learned much about the curative virtues of herbs because of the remarkable instinct of present day animals who unquestionably know the herbs that heal them. And it is logical to suppose that such marvelous instincts, which all wild animals possess today, must always have been inherent in their ancestors. From the highest to the lowest crawling creature, they all seem to know their remedies. Even the snake, the lowest and perhaps the least intelligent of them, knows his remedy. When he casts his skin, he goes blind. And in that helpless condition, he has often been seen to crawl to an old fallen tree or a mossy bank. He rubs his sightless orbs in the moss and eats the rich juice. And with that one herb, he restores both his skin and his sight. We know how wise in herbal lore are the Indians and Aboriginal tribes. Numbered among our proven and most valuable remedies: cumin, caraway seeds, myrrh, olive oil. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, the only true science of medicine is the intelligent use of nature's only real medicinal remedies, herbs. Although Hippocrates was born on the island of Kos in Asiatic Turkey, he was a Greek. This impudent and unprincipled charlatan was none other than Paracelsus. Paracelsus, to whom the medical world of today is more indebted for the mineral drugging system than to all other physicians who ever lived. He introduced the mercurial and antimonial practice, which still constitutes the great bulk of the materia medica of today, and which also continues to pursue its terrible, devastating power on all human constitutions that come under its sway and influence. Strange are the incongruities, inconsistencies, and inanities of the human mind. Strange indeed how the ignorant multitude will persist in making heroes out of cruel and inhumane criminals, as in the case of Paracelsus. Paracelsus. At the present time, among a certain class of physicians, there is hardly a disease in the catalog of human ailments in which mercury, zinc, lead, copper, antimony, arsenic, and many other deadly, drastic drugs are not employed, and all they have to do is write a death certificate to be exonerated of all blame for the death of their patrons. A pharmacist has to be exceedingly careful and exact in compounding prescriptions, which are often of a very poisonous nature. So must the botanical physician be. There are very many peculiarities about plants which are little known to the great majority of herbalists, and that is the main reason for their mediocre results. It is quite within the bounds of reason that an exact knowledge of the laws of life will ultimately enable us to so increase and augment the anabolic constructive processes of metabolism that the catabolic destructive processes will be so diminished and minimized that ultimately they will disappear entirely. A statement that is diametrically opposed. A statement that is diametrically opposed to an almost universal belief and then prove it to be true. Vitamins A, B, C, D, or any other letter in the alphabet. The very word is a clumsy misnomer. Vita is from the Latin meaning to live. The word min is only an abbreviation of the Latin word minimus, a minim, or drop of liquid, the smallest liquid measure, the 16th part of a fluid drachm. Therefore, literally, a vitamin is the tiniest drop of liquid life. Strange are some beliefs of man and gullibility of the multitudes. No one has ever defined the word vitamin, nor shown its chemical composition, because life is not a ponderable substance, either solid, liquid, or gaseous, but an inscrutable essence which defies the greatest wisdom to define. Dr. Bostock, MD, author of History of Medicine, once said, "Every dose of medicine given by us is a blind experiment upon the vitality of the patient." An herbalist or botanic physician is one whose therapeusis is confined to the use of herbs, roots, bark, seeds, flowers, and berries. It is self-evident, therefore, that a real herbalist or botanic physician is a true natural physician. His ministrations are confined to the substances which Mother Nature has so bountifully provided, that are organic in chemistry, that are endowed with life, and are harmonious with the chemistry of man. This is diametrically opposed to the pernicious practice of administering poisons, serums, vaccines, and inorganic drugs for which cell life has an abhorrence. Orthodoxy attempts to effect a cure by killing the infection with powerful inorganic drugs or by the injection of dangerous serums or vaccines, which no doubt interfere with the efforts of cell intelligence to stop and destroy the invaders. Nothing should be added to the body in disease that cannot be utilized by the cell intelligence of that body in its chemical balancing and healing processes. This applies to excess food as well as to dead inorganic poisonous substances, misnamed medicines. Nature has provided in her extensive laboratory the necessary substances which contain the needed ingredients to heal the ills of mankind, if he would but take to if he would but take the time to study. Cell intelligence refuses to assimilate those substances which are poisonous. Therefore, poisons cannot be expected to heal. English physician Dr. Rush, MD. Such is my confidence in the benevolence of deity that I believe he has placed on earth remedies for all the maladies of man. But so conflicting are the opinions of medical men, so arrayed are they against each other, that the science of medicine is like an unroofed temple, cracked at the sides and rotten at the foundation. There are two reasons why we cannot cure the sick: want of the knowledge of disease and want of a remedy. Dr. Chain, MD, says mineral medicines are so destructive to human bodies that malice could not invent anything more deadly beyond gunpowder itself. Dr. Blaine, MD, says the history of medicine so teems with delusive, inefficient, and capricious practices, fallacious and sophistical reasonings, as to render it little more than a chaos of error, a tissue of deceit, unworthy of admission among the useful arts and liberal pursuits of men. Dr. John Mason Good, MD, FRS, author of Book of Nature, System of Nosology, Study of Medicine, etc., says, the science of medicine is a barbarous jargon, and the effects of our medicine on the human system is in the highest degree uncertain, except that they have destroyed more lives than even war, pestilence, and famine combined. Sir Anthony Carlyle, MD, LRCS, LRCP, consultant and advisor of the King's Physician in Ordinary. There is more virtue in a handful of herbs than in all the remedies of the pharmacopoeias. Chemistry, per se, is nothing more or less than the potential electrical nature of matter in molecular or atomic form. It is my belief that there is no word used by man that is so indefinite and as clumsily used as the word electricity. Electra, the goddess of life, principle of life and energy. All matter, organic or inorganic, is charged with electricity, and the amount of that charge determines its character. A minus charge is called negative, a plus charge is called positive. Formerly, we thought that the unit of matter was the atom, but an English scientist, J.J. Thomson, discovered that the atom was not the smallest part of matter, that each atom is composed of electrons, which are the real units of matter and energy. Medicine is the only branch of science in which there has been no noticeable improvement nor advancement. It is sad to relate that purulent disease marches on unchecked today, and that amid the host of licensed medical physicians in all parts of the world, none has found the cause or cure for cancer. Japan is the most vaccinated country in the world today, yet smallpox rages alongside of vaccination. Syphilis is on the increase. 70% of our high school girls are suffering with thyroiditis and female trouble. A very large number of our young boys and girls are terribly disfigured with acne, furunculosis, and skin diseases. Many are mentally, morally, and physically debauched through unlicensed drinking, smoking, carousing, and aspirin taking. Drugs are available to all, both young and old. A great part of Europe is drunk with the lust for blood, all because their body secretions are poisoned with serums and their brains unbalanced by ale, Kummel, absinthe, vino, morphine, opium, alcohol, dried meat, sour pickles, etc. Insanity and bestial criminality saturate our so called civilization, which is rapidly degenerating into a bacchanalian orgy of perverted indulgence. Since that branch of science we call medicine is a disgraceful and ignominious failure, since that branch of science we call medicine is a disgraceful and ignominious failure, and has done more than any other agency to bring about the chaotic and pitiful unbalance of the human race today. Many plants have acquired the habit of assimilating from the soil in which they grow such poisonous elements as copper, arsenic, lead, aluminum, etc. What a man eats, he is. The whole world was covered with plant life in endless variety and beauty, from of the lowest form of plant algae growing in water to the highest and most complete developed plants, the compositae or thistle family. Wherever you cut through the flesh of any animal, you have as much venous blood as arterial blood, and the venous blood contains the waste matter and debris of that animal's cells. Another vegetarian argument is that animal flesh is subject to putrefaction and produces very poisonous alkaloids, while vegetables in process of decay do not produce alkaloids or putrefaction. It is almost unbelievable that tens of thousands of men and women who call themselves physicians are actually opposed to this theory and every day of their lives work against it, deliberately defying the laws of nature and flaunting their infernal mineral drugs in the face of creation. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, was an herbalist pure and simple. According to botanical history, only 235 herbs were known on the island of Kos in Asiatic Turkey. But with a selected few of these, he treated and cured his entire nation and the surrounding nations. Rome banished her physicians for 600 years, and historical tradition says that after that, their sick people quickly recovered their health and maintained it during the entire era. Hippocrates is honored and almost worshipped as the greatest physician that ever lived. What an insult to Hippocrates to put his picture on the diplomas of physicians who sneer at and condemn as useless the very herbs he used to cure many thousands. These arrogant followers of Paracelsus, these so-called honorable and ethical gentlemen, who are not one whit less human destroyers than their quack predecessor, still continue his pernicious ways. They turn the sweat, salivary, and other glands into foul cesspools of mercurial salivation. They persist in turning healthy bone into a stinking mass of necrosis by the use of the same metal. They paralyze and destroy the human heart with digitalis and morphine, and with adrenaline depress the circulation, causing loss of flesh with its accompanying wrinkles and changing the skin from a healthy to a pale and sallow hue. They wreck the brain and nervous system with quinine, destroy the glands venerea with potassium iodide, and the red blood corpuscles with bicarbonate of soda and potassa. They produce cancer by administering inorganic potassium and cruelly supply opium to mother to give their children to drug them to sleep with paregoric. The liver is wrecked with copper, lead, zinc, gold, and silver, while the eye is made to run with belladonna and atropine. They cut out tonsils, adenoids, appendix, cancers, tumors, and pieces of intestines, remove gallbladders, kidneys, uterus, ovaries, and varicose veins, and amputate fingers, toes, hands, arms, feet, legs, and other infected parts because they have no remedy for any disease whatsoever. Little children are inoculated with diseased horse's blood for diphtheria, syphilitic pus for smallpox, and so on, although the whole miserable chicanery and wicked asinine practice. Why do we take your time rehearsing these facts? Why? Because it is time something was done about it. Time spent in learning the truth is never wasted, and any man who has a mother, father, wife, or child who in sickness is forced by law to call in and depend upon licensed poisoners and destroyers and meekly condone this most terrible and horrible condition of things is a weakling, much worse than the poor, dopey Germans, Italians, Japanese, and Russians who are all drugged and doped into obedience to their devil dictators, ready to exterminate even their own mothers and all others who dare to question their drunken philosophy that might is right, and to hell with the other fellow. Galen wrote 300 volumes on the use of herbs. It was reported in the Leeds Mercury, a paper, one of England's most famous judges named Mr. Justice Grantham once said in a case brought before him of an herbalist who was charged by the doctors with practicing medicine without a license. The doctors are a jealous people. They call these men, the herbalists, quacks. But it is a fact that these men do things which the doctors could not do. It is a matter of common knowledge that a common cobbler has cured thousands of cases the doctors have never been able to touch. Wild red raspberry. Its leaves produce painless childbirth. There is left only one ogre with any power to oppress and hamper the freedom of the people who live in the Western Hemisphere, and that is the American Medical Association. This giant ogre is the bestial son of the British Medical Association. The father, MBA, has had his wings clipped. The so-called American, though English-born, Thomas Paine expounded the rights of man and the age of reason. This great man, even though we may not altogether agree with his philosophy, has so influenced British thought that Englishmen, with their famous bulldog nature, have banded together to expel and cast out the evil influences of the BMA, which sought strenuously for more than 20 years to stop the practice of herbalism by the inaction of laws that would make all herbalists criminals and liable to various terms of imprisonment. Herbalist Henry Box published and distributed a book called The Famous Bird That Speaks One Word, Quack, in which he exposed their dreadful practice. He picked them out individually, one after the other, and exposed them all in his book, which he mailed to many thousands for the sum of 6 pence. They took him to court, but no judge would grant an injunction against him because he had cured thousands. He was England's greatest hero. Finally, both the doctors and the judges became so afraid of him that he was left severely alone to heal his people with herbs. This he has continued to do for more than half a century, and today his name is famous throughout the civilized world. We have learned that herbs belonging to the same family or species have very decided selective action upon different parts or organs of the body. Raspberry leaves, for instance, in their particular selection of the female genitalia, correct dysfunction of those organs and restore them to health and strength, even those that have not functioned normally and naturally for years. Again, we learned that the blackberry plant, a member of the same family, is a remarkable solvent of calcareous deposits around the joints. It is also a blood purifier and carrier of oxygen, owing to its content of iron and the abundance of organic oxygen contained within its berries. What is there in the world today that is more immoral than the drugging of our people with arsenic, lead, zinc, mercury, etc.? The brutal cutting out of inflamed vital organs that have been poisoned by these mineral drugs, or the various serums cultured from disease and decay. The healing of the sick is considered to be the highest and most necessary calling in the world, but its problem today is greater than ever before. It is a strange paradox or contradiction that the principal cause of more than 70% of all disease today is brought about by licensed physicians. It is not that the educated people are an ignorant class generally, but that vast sums of money are spent in propaganda to boast and advertise the great good work the doctors are doing for humanity. The people without a knowledge of anatomy, physiology, chemistry, and bacteriology are quite incapable of disputing the statements made by the doctors, and so they remain in power unchecked, causing the whole civilized world to suffer untold agonies, mentally and physically, through their devilish practices. To prove that this broad statement of fact is absolutely true, we shall first quote a few reliable opinions on the subject. Then we shall endeavor to show the way out by pointing out the only possible remedy for this state of affairs. If we can do this, we shall have conferred a great benefit upon humanity. To heal a disease is to remove the cause. What a wonderful world this would be to live in if 70% of all sickness were eliminated. Serum treatment or vaccination was started by Edward Jenner, an English physician, 1749 to 1883. By Dr. Gifford while addressing the International Congress in Paris in 1889, used these words: "To Edward Jenner, a great monument has been erected in memory, and upon its columns future generations will inscribe, 'Accursed be the man by whose cunning device the blood of nations has been poisoned.'" Dr. William Hitchman, consulting surgeon to the Cancer Hospital, Leeds, and formerly public vaccinator to the city of Liverpool, England, expressly states that syphilis, phthisis, scrofula cancer, and erysipelas, and almost all diseases of the skin have been conveyed, occasioned, or intensified by vaccination. Dr. Edward Houghton, BAMD, MRCS, English gold medalist in natural science, says, "Cancer and other vile diseases are daily inflicted on virtuous families by vaccination." The arsenical pigments also produce disastrous results by being incorporated in ornamental pieces of confectionery, by being used in dyeing of textile fabrics, from which they may easily rub off, from their use for the destruction of insects, and by being used in the manufacture of wallpaper. Dr. Whithouse draws a mild picture of the grave dangers of even breathing arsenical dust or fumes, just mentioning that it is used as dye in the manufacture of cloth and wallpaper. To draw a fair picture relative to these two common uses of arsenic, he should have said that billions of yards of cheap cretonne, ginghams, and calico are annually bought by poor people to be made into window curtains and other drapes, to say nothing of dresses, aprons, babies and adult bathing suits, sweaters, socks, stockings, neckties, colored hats, ribbons, and towels. This method is also used to dye paper napkins, toilet paper, etc. He did not tell us that arsenical treatment of hair for the making of felt hats is the principal cause of baldness. That arsenic is used unchecked by medical health boards or doctors in 1001 industries, in paint, varnish, printing, blue, green, red, brown, pink, and other pigments, fireworks, aniline dyes, ceramic enamels, fly poisons, rat poisons, insecticides, sheep dips, bullets and shot, so-called medicinal soaps, soap coloring, hide preservative, boiler compounds, depilatories for removing hair, clarifying agent for decolorizing glass, for spraying our foods, vegetables, fruits, wheat, etc., Paris green, and for many other purposes. Even all this is not the gravest or greatest danger to the human race as far as arsenic is concerned. Dr. Whithouse carefully refrained from mentioning that probably 1 million so-called physicians in the so-called civilized world daily and hourly recommend and use amounts of arsenic in various forms, which total many hundreds of tons per annum. These hellish preparations are used internally for malaria, skin diseases, eczema, psoriasis, prurigo, lepra, cancer, furunculosis, acne, lupus, intermittence, nervous debility, chorea, chronic rheumatism, gout, constitutional syphilis, frontal neuralgia, hemicrania, obesity, gastralgia, anemia, spasmodic asthma, amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, leukorrhea, diabetes, albuminuria, chronic diarrhea. Externally for cancers, tumors, epithelial tumors, lupus, sarcoma, warts, malignant ulcers, curious teeth, etc. The doctor also failed to tell us that over 50 large chemical corporations and companies in America buy and sell arsenical compounds in casks of 500, 550, and 600 pounds, while several thousand smaller chemical companies and wholesale druggists in America buy and sell it in lesser quantities from 1 to 200 pounds, to say nothing of retail druggists. All arsenical compounds produce symptoms strongly resembling those of cholera. In the opening chapter of Genesis, we read, "In the beginning, the earth was void and without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. The Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters, and God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." It goes without saying that the human mind cannot grasp the real meaning of this profound occult statement, but there is a phenomenon in nature which, when seen, brings the above statement to minds with a tendency to meditate on the mystery and grandeur of the great panorama of natural phenomena. Those of you who have crossed the ocean have probably looked over the immense deep on a dark night when visibility from the above is almost nil, and have seen a soft phosphorescent glow of light moving on the face of the waters. It is the spirit of life, minute living creatures in countless numbers, moving upon the surface and creating light and darkness, giving our radiant energy, ions of phosphorus and fluorine, into the womb of life, the ocean, and the breath of life, the atmosphere. Since we are studying marine plants that absorb and store this radiant energy for us and all living creatures, we thought the simile or similitude of this natural phenomenon with the biblical story of creation in a limited sense was relevant to our subject. Radiant energy of fluorescent light radiation is constantly going on in every realm of life on Earth. But like the aurora borealis, it can be seen plainly only in darkness. One of the most amazing things about it is its simplicity of structure and its complicated chemistry. It is one of the simplest and lowest orders of vegetable life, there being very little or no difference between root, stem, or leaf. In fact, it has no root, leaves, or flowers. It is attached to the rocks on which it grows beneath the surface of the ocean by small discs. When disease is caused by the shortage of one or more of the elements or compound that make up the human body, which it frequently is, a knowledge of the chemistry of the body in health will enable us, with a considerable degree of accuracy, to read the symptoms of various diseases caused by the deficiency. A knowledge of the chemistry of herbs will enable us to supply that deficiency and eliminate the disease. There is no other way, either to understand these forms of ill health or to eradicate them, except by first recognizing the lack and then supplying the missing material. Just as a rose collapses without sufficient water, so will bone collapse without sufficient calcium phosphate, blood without sufficient iron, brain without sufficient potassium phosphate, heart without sufficient calcium chloride. All cells will decay and produce pus without sufficient sulfur. The lungs will collapse without enough oxygen. The hair will die without silica. The glands will cease to function without iodine. The skin will shrink and die without potash, sulfate. And finally, the connective tissues throughout the whole system will atrophy and die without calcium fluoride. No chemical analysis to date has found calcium fluoride in Chandris. So how can we know it to be there? The answer is by inference. How do we know that matter is composed of atoms? No one has ever seen an atom and probably never will. But we know that matter is atomic by studying the phenomena of chemical change. The results obtained prove the presence of atoms. And by the same process of reasoning, we know the presence of calcium fluoride in Chandris, or Irish moss, or maybe you call it sea moss. The American and other governments have established experimental stations for the growing and testing of herbs. When a man sticks a gun into your back and takes all your money, he is a criminal according to the law. But when he sticks a knife into your abdomen, takes all of your life savings plus your appendix, he is a doctor according to the law. There is only a slight difference between these two. One takes your pocket money and leaves you whole. The other takes everything you've got and leaves you minus one or more of the necessary organs or wheels of life with which to live and carry on. There is another remarkable herb growing in the ocean with which we should become acquainted with, and that is bladderwrack. The regular school of medicine, there is evidence in abundance that they have not advanced 1 inch in the past 100 years. Here is the unbiased statement of one of their own members who, through honesty, has come to abhor poisonous drugs and now uses only nature's remedies. He says, the spirit of progress in the arts, science, and industries of the world during the past 50 years has wrought no change in the healing art. Minds have been empty of their cankering minerals, the intestines of animals taxed of their filth, the poison bags of reptiles drained of their vermin, the blood of black cats and white puppy dogs extracted by vivisection, and all these and many other abominations. Less than 100 years ago, the following disgusting objects were in daily use and formed the most prominent remedies of the medical profession of that period: earthworms, hog's lice, snakes, toads, skins of hens, gizzards, viper's flesh, man's hair, dried human flesh, the heart of a mole, crab's eyes, sheep's excrements. From another standard medical work, Collectane Medica, London, 1725, page 25, we find the following remedies: for quinsy, powder of burnt owls. For quinsy, powder of burnt owls. 1 drachm, burnt swallows. 1 drachm, cat's brains. 2 drachms, dried and powdered blood of white puppy dogs. 2 drachms. For colic, wolf's guts, dried and powdered. 2 drachms, old man's urine. 3 drachms. Sheep excrements, 2 drachms. A sovereign remedy. Smallpox no longer monopolizes vaccinations, but shares it with the measles, scarlatina, diphtheria, hypochondria, erysipelas, cholera, hydrophobia, and delirium tremens. It is based on conjecture and improved by sad blunders and hidden by death. We make these slight deviations from our subject as a matter of education. It is impossible. It is almost impossible to learn the truth of what goes on behind of locked doors of the medical castle until someone on the inside becomes so horrified and ashamed that he can stand it no longer, and so comes out and tells the world. It is a sad fact that the great majority of medical textbooks are written and published by the regulars. Not only are they misleading, but there is scarcely a word of truth to be found in them. They consist mostly of technological extravagance, a series of over elaborated and extremely complicated theories as to the cause of disease, a total ignorance of the laws of nature, the laws of logic, and the laws of just plain common sense. We urge you to not waste your time in study of them, for there is grave danger of your being caught in the net of their mental aberrations and first wondering, then wandering from the paths of logical reason, first wondering, then wandering from the paths of logical reasoning and common sense. They will show you illustrations of minute living organisms, so-called pathological germs, which they found in sputum or pus taken from diseased tissues or secretions probably. At first sight, you are astonished. Then you begin to wonder, can this be true? Yes, it must be true. It must be true. There they are, right in the pus, plain as can be. How awful that such creatures can live and destroy our bodies without our knowledge until too late. Surely these doctors have discovered the truth. They are right. The germs must be killed. But wait a minute before you jump to such a conclusion. We find the fly on garbage, which is composed of decaying organic matter. Is he, the fly, the cause of the garbage, or does the garbage breed the fly? We find the mosquito in the swamp. Does the mosquito cause the swamp? We find the white maggot in decaying flesh. Was he, the maggot, the cause of death? And what are these creatures doing there? They are eating, consuming, doing away with the decaying matter. Let's look further. The fly consumes 16 times its own weight per day, and his average life is 200 days. Therefore, 1 ounce of flies consumes 1 pound of diseased matter per day. And during his normal life of 200 days, he actually does away with 200 pounds of diseased matter, the weight of a heavy man. This is an underestimate. For it is estimated that 1 ounce of flies will probably become 100 pounds of flies in 200 days, just over 7 months. Therefore, the amount of decomposing matter done away with by the original ounce of flies is probably nearer to 1,000 pounds. As a matter of fact, the little fly is one of the greatest scavengers in nature, and it has been conservatively estimated that, but for the fly, humanity would be exterminated by pestilence within 10 years because decaying organic matter would so pollute the air we breathe and the water we drink. The waters of life and the very breath of life itself would quickly destroy us. So, ladies and gentlemen, do we point out the way for you to avoid the pitfalls of ignorance and error on the part of the magnanimous and grandiose medicos, because they and their infernal findings and doctrines have done and are still doing more kill off the human race than all other destructive agencies in nature? So, ladies and gentlemen, do we point out the way for you to avoid the pitfalls of ignorance and error on the part of the magnanimous and grandiose medicos, because they and their infernal findings and doctrines have done and are still doing more to kill off the human race than all other destructive agencies in nature. The following is taken from the British Medical Journal of a few years ago. The editor, referring to the regulars or the faculty, says, "In no profession are ignorance and helplessness so systematically veiled under the assumption of infallibility and omnipotence. In no profession do they so flatly contradict each other on the rudiments of the science of medicine. In no profession is the knowledge of one generation so invariably discredited by the next." I will close with Dr. Skerritt's remarks and leave you to these awful reflections. It is refreshing in this age of medical bombast to find at least one member of the profession honest enough to give public expression to his true opinions. The text which Dr. Markham Skerritt selected for his address to the Medical School of Bristol upon the occasion of its anniversary was "The Teachings of Failure," and the fearlessness with which the lecturer showed up the hollow pretenses of the craft was admirable. He impressed upon his medical brethren the fact that, at the present day, not only are their studies still full of complexity and obscurity, their doctrines transitory and fallacious, and their methods clumsy and dangerous, but furthermore, that the teachers themselves make the danger and confusion worse by their defective observations and their illogical habits of mind. The claims made week after week for a list of new remedies are simply astounding. There is such a plethora of specifics for every ill to which flesh is heir, that the wonder is how anyone ever contrives to die with a doctor in attendance. Nevertheless, die they do. Do the right thing.